Hello guys and welcome back for a roundup of the JRPGs I've played in the last 3 months. First of all, apologies, my tech problems have gone on longer than I expected and I'm hoping now that will be the end of it. And that's why for this quarter, I've only played 6 games as I play a lot of my JRPGs on PC, and without it, I also don't have the means of recording gameplay. Either way though, it's the same deal as the last 2 times. I'll show you guys the games I played in ranked order, and naturally since I've finished all of them, they are games that I consider to be good at the very least. At number 6 is Live Alive, the remake of the original from 1994. The structure of the game is such that you'll be playing through different eras which all house their own unique protagonist. Overall, I had a really good time with it, and what Live Alive has in its favour is diversity. Though the core turn-based gameplay remains mostly the same, each era has unique gimmicks that set them apart from the rest. And that's not just limited to gameplay. Some of them are going to have cheesy openings reminiscent of the early 90s, others won't have any dialogue at all, and some will change up the genre entirely. It's really cool, and though I admit some eras are notably better than others, I feel there is something for everyone in Live Alive. Not to mention it's short as a whole, and it's structured in a way that you can easily complete an era per night if you really wanted to. The only thing that really held it back for me personally was the final chapter. I just expected a bit more from it, but it was a nice palate cleanser considering some of the longer games I played during these 3 months. At number 5 is Nora and the Time Studio, a title that I did a video on not too long ago. This game is Atlus's take on Atelier. It has certain alumni from that series along with the artists of Etrian Odyssey, so there's a degree of familiarity on both fronts. Now admittedly, Nora is not exactly an accessible title. It was never translated into English, and the only way we are able to play it is due to a fan translation. However, once you do get it working, you'll be greeted with one of the more relaxing and wholesome adventures within JRPGs. Nora and the Time Studio borrows heavily from Atelier, and that has a very minor focus on story, heavier input from characters, and indeed a crafting system that takes center stage. Nora is a novice chronomancer, and she goes on a pilgrimage of sorts to learn the ways of her village. In order to do this, she has to spend 3 years in the Misty Forest to hone her skills. As such, the game operates on a time limit, but despite that I never felt stressed. It's never looming over your head, and the game is short enough that if you do screw up and get a bad ending, you can at least restart and finish a second playthrough in a day if you really wanted to. The gameplay loop is also as simple as it gets, but still addicting. You'll go to exploration fields to gather materials, get involved in turn-based combat here and there, and then work with what you've gathered to deepen your armory of recipes. During this period you can also pursue character stories, which also adds a degree of replayability as you won't be able to see them all in one playthrough. It's short, it's sweet, and it's comfortable all around. At number 4 is this cozy gem by Level 5 in Ni no Kuni. This is a game that I consider to be a great starting JRPG. All the fundamentals are there, it's got huge amounts of polish, and you've got the immediately identifiable art style of Studio Ghibli. And outside of those opening moments, there's not really anything that's too heavy in this game. The tone stays fairly mellow over the course of this adventure, which I think works in its favour. The combat was also pretty good. It took a bit of time to get used to, but I enjoyed the whole idea of switching out your team on the fly and capitalising on openings. For me though, I would have preferred if the all-out attack and all-out defend options were made available from the start, since the AI was, well, lacking in intelligence, especially during the early boss fights. Once you got these 2 options, it became much easier to manage. The reason Ni no Kuni doesn't break into the top half though is that I felt it ran out of steam as it entered the final 5 hours or so. It was fairly noticeable that plot developments became more contrived, and also that the Ghibli animated cutscenes became more rare the closer I got to the end. It was as if they ran out of time or ran out of money. Heck, it could have been both. So it ended on a bit of a whimper, but overall it was a pleasant experience. At number 3 is the new IP from Square and Artdink in Triangle Strategy. Now, I knew I was going to enjoy this. I do have a soft spot for tactical games, but I didn't think I would enjoy it as much as I did. What I have to give Triangle Strategy immediate praise for is in its heavy choices. Throughout the game, Serenoa and the party will have to decide on their course of action by consulting the scales of conviction. If you want to progress down a certain path, you will need to convince your party members to vote with you rather than against you. And some of the choices given are really tough. There's an actual feeling of regret and impact if you choose some of the more grey choices, and that lends well to the replayability on offer, as Triangle Strategy boasts 4 separate endings. In terms of its meat and bones though, that being the tactical gameplay, it's very strong. Multiple levels to gain advantages, plenty of options to affect terrain, a plethora of different recruitable characters with their own stories and unique gameplay mechanics, customization and progression of said units is decent too, and it's fairly challenging on those higher difficulties. Maybe a little too unforgiving at certain points. I also felt that the balance between story and gameplay was decent as well. I've never really minded more story-centric games, but I think the balance was just right here between the plot, exploration, and indeed the battles themselves. I had a good time with this one, and I'll happily recommend it to fans of tactical games, especially now that it's come to PC. At number 2 is one that might shock a few people, I'm sure, but I can't help what I enjoy, nor will I apologise for it. It is Tokyo Mirage Sessions FE Encore, the Fire Emblem Atlas crossover that originally released on the Wii U. I was immediately interested in this game when it was first announced back in 2015 for that aforementioned console. It just ticked a lot of the boxes in my head, but I never got around to buying it. Thankfully, when it came to Switch, I no longer had an excuse to avoid it, and it certainly was worth the wait. There will be familiarity here for those who have played Persona or SMT games, as many of the abilities are drawn directly from those titles, but it's set in a universe that has small connections to Fire Emblem, and I think that's being generous. Really, this is more an original title focused on showbiz as we follow our main cast in their quests to become domestic and indeed international stars. And though the main story is lacking, I will admit, it does make up for that with its side stories specific to each character. All of them have 3 side stories on offer, and you do need to do these if you want the best ending, which gives you double the incentive to do them, since these are definitely the highlight of the experience for me. I felt the gameplay was solid with the sessions mechanic. You could chain together some very long attack sequences, and it was unashamedly flashy with its musical numbers that were sprinkled throughout the game. It's certainly not a perfect title by any stretch, but it very easily stands apart from many contemporaries, and the elements that do allow it to stand apart, it does very well. And at number 1, well, I think most people could see this coming from a mile away, so I doubt it's a surprise, but it's Xenoblade Chronicles 3. I mean, it was never gonna be anything else in this quarter. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is a very interesting game to me in that I prefer the combat from XC2, I prefer the story from XC1, but what Xenoblade Chronicles 3 has over its predecessors is that it doesn't have an inherent weakness. For example, Xenoblade Chronicles 1 had the arguably too open world and a divisive battle system, 2 had the strange design decisions here and there with the field skills unique to the blades, the gacha style mechanics, and the fact that its combat took a while to get going. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 on the other hand doesn't really have those, and it helps that even though in my mind it's not as strong as Xenoblade Chronicles 1 and 2 on both a narrative and gameplay front respectively, it's still got an excellent story, and it's still got excellent combat. Xenoblade as a series sets the bar so high on certain facets that to overcome them would be very impressive in of itself, but just because it doesn't do that, it doesn't mean that it isn't still stellar in its own right. What I will say Xenoblade Chronicles 3 had above its contemporaries though came in its cinematography. I consider this game to be one of the best JRPGs in terms of its artistic direction. Many of these cutscenes are just mind-blowing. Some of them as a sequence lasting for over 30 minutes, but they keep you engaged throughout, which is a testament to how well they're structured and paced. The only thing I disliked came right near the end in the final boss. It was a bit too much for me with the 5 different phases and the unskippable cutscenes in between, and sure, hearing the same voiceover clips after every battle was a bit grating as well, but I can look past that because everything else is just brilliant. The positives are so far ahead on balance that it was a shoo-in to be the best game I played this quarter, and likely will be one of the best games I've played all year. And there it is guys, the JRPGs that I've played from July to September. Share the games you've been playing in the comments and I'll see you pretty soon, as long as my computer doesn't choke on its electro dick.